Peugeot's classy medium-range 508 model has sharpened up its act. This improved version of the second generation design aims to offer a classier approach to D-segment motoring and does, delivering an appealing combination of style and savoir-faire. Life's too short for boring car design.
Big French cars used to be interesting and distinctive, just like this one is, the improved second generation version of Peugeot's 508. It's one of the few mainstream branded contenders left in the D segment that used to be such a rich source of sales for the volume makers. And it still delivers something quite different, offering a choice of 5-door, fastback and SW estate body styles. You might even prefer it to something with a premium badge, especially in this enhanced form, introduced here in early 2023, 5 years after the original launch. Continuing to offer a car of this kind is a sensible move from Peugeot, not in view of likely European sales, but because the huge Chinese market, unafflicted by badge snobbery and an insistence for impractical SUVs, simply loves cars of this kind. That was why the Stellantis Group greenlighted not only development of this R83 era second generation 508, but also an identically engineered but rather differently styled Citroën model, the C5X, launched in 2021. Both cars are rare to see on British highways, but for likely customers, that'll probably be all part of the appeal. Peugeot used to have a distinguished and rather stylish history in selling larger D-segment designs of this kind, with the 403 model of the 50s, the 404 of the 60s, the 504 of the 70s and the 505 of the 80s. With the switch to front-wheel drive that accompanied the launch of the 405 in 1987, though, the company rather lost its way, and successive models, the 406 of 1995, the 407 of 2003 and the first-generation 508 of 2010, were somewhat forgettable. So, for this new era 508, launched in early 2018, the brand had a complete rethink, and as a result, both this stylish 5-door fastback coupe model and its sleeker SW Estate showroom stablemate have actually sold a little better than the brand expected. Whether well enough for the 508 model line to continue in the future into the new electrified era is another question, of course. But this package of mid-term updates should help, which has brought a sharper look and improved cabin screen tech. Diesels are no more, PHEV powertrains are prioritised, and the potent Peugeot Sport engineered model continues as the range flagship. Should it all be enough to persuade you to consider this car as a more elegant alternative to a premium badge rival? Well, you'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test, to find out. If you're swapping over from a premium branded German rival, you'll find it all quite different behind the wheel of this 508. Now, whether that's a good thing will be a matter of personal preference, of course. As usual with Peugeots, you'll either love or hate the so-called cockpit dash design with its dinky little wheel over rather than through which you view the newly redesigned configurable instrument screen. This particular 508's a plug-in hybrid, as Peugeot hopes a large proportion will be, and once you fire it up, it eases away with characteristic EV stillness. You don't have to have a PHEV with this car. Though diesels are no more, Peugeot's still offering its usual PureTech 1.2-litre 3-cylinder petrol unit, but not, a little surprisingly, in concert with the 48-volt hybrid system you can these days have in a 3008. As before, PureTech 508 put out 130 horsepower, which is a modest output for a car of this size, explaining the rather relaxed level of performance on offer. Rest to 62 miles an hour in 10 seconds en route to 129 miles an hour. The brand's EAT8 8-speed auto gearbox is of course mandatory. The days are long gone for manual transmission in this market segment. The brand used to offer a conventional 1.6-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine in this car too, a unit that lives on in the hybrid 225 variant we're trying here, and in the rare Peugeot sport-engineered flagship sports model we'll tell you about later. With this hybrid 225, the 181 horsepower power plant and its 8-speed auto gearbox are mated to a 110 horsepower electric motor on the front axle, powered by a 12.4 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. When fully charged, this allows for up to 42.3 miles of WLTP-rated all-electric driving range. There's also an e-save function to store your accumulated battery charge for later in your journey. You get 3 main driving modes, and as usual with such setups, these settings primarily influence steering feedback, throttle response, and gear shift timings. The mode you'll be using most of the time is the hybrid setting that choose the best mix of electric and petrol propulsion to suit your prevailing driving style whilst optimizing efficiency. The alternative settings are either Sport, where the car combines the power of the electric and petrol motors to offer livelier performance, and Electric, battery power only, in which guise the car is apparently able to run at up to 84 miles an hour. With the engine chiming in 62 miles an hour from rest, occupies 7.9 seconds, and top speed is limited to 149 miles an hour. If you've avoided base trim and paid extra to have the adaptive damping system fitted, you'll get a 4th drive mode, Comfort. The hybrid system's extra 280 kilos of weight slightly blunts the handling, but refinement is exemplary, even with the PureTech engine working, and the ride is superb. Ah yes, ride quality. Now back in the 70s and 80s, big Peugeots used to be known for that. Today though, the brand wants to be recognised as much for driving dynamics, and sure enough, that low-set eye cockpit driving position and the wrist flick response of the little wheel do give you a sporty feel, making you want to explore a handling balance that, in our view, in this class you'd have to be in a BMW to better. Being front-driven, there's only so far the French engineers could go with this 508 in that regard, but they've clearly spent a long time tuning the multi-link rear suspension for the ideal balance between supple damping and sharp cornering response. It does occasionally get a bit caught out by lower speed potholes and speed humps, but the well-controlled cornering demeanour at speed more than makes up for it. The caveat here is that you really need to be in a car fitted with that optional adaptive damping system to get the full effect. Earlier, we promised you a quick briefing on the top Peugeot sport-engineered flagship model, which uses the PHEV powertrain in an uprated twin motor form. The battery and 110 horsepower front motor are the same as in this ordinary hybrid 225, but the PSE model adds a further 113 horsepower motor on the rear axle and pushes engine output to 200 horsepower. These measures together pushing total output to a heady 360 horsepower, enough to take the car to 62 miles an hour in just 5.2 seconds en route to a top speed that must be restricted to 155 miles an hour. That PSE model's good around the bends too. Having a motor on each axle means all-wheel drive, which combined with grippy Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres means tenacious traction through the turns. Adaptive damping's included, and with the Comfort Drive setting selected, allows for a supple standard of ride despite the big 20-inch wheels. The electric steering rack isn't particularly feelsome, but the car changes direction alertly. It's really quite a different kind of 508. Our focus here though is on more mainstream 508s. With these variants you don't mind the slightly lifeless steering quite so much, but you might object to the way the gear shift paddles are fixed to the steering column, which means they aren't always where you want them when you're trying to do an upshift in the middle of a corner. There's lots to like here though. We've already mentioned the carefully configured suspension setup and the impressive cruising refinement, helped by the sleek aerodynamics and the installation of thick premium style glazing. You might also notice that, intentionally, this Peugeot isn't quite as wide as some other cars in this class. So when you're sat within the lane of a typical British A or B road, you feel there's a touch more space to breathe. As we said when we tried the original version of this car, this is a more credible large Peugeot than any other we can remember. If you didn't want one before, then you probably won't want one now, but see someone driving this 508 and credit them with a bit of discernment. Being different can sometimes be better, as this car proves. It's hard to remember now just what a frumpy-looking four-door the original pre-2018 era W23 version of this car was, because this replacement R83 second-generation model really has opened up a fresh chapter in Peugeot design, one that's further developed with this updated design. As before, there's a choice of either the 4.75 metre long 5-door hatch version we have here, which the brand wants us to call a fastback, or a swoopy 4.79 metre SW estate variant. Either way, the idea is to position this car as an alternative to models like the Audi A5 Sportback or the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe, which might be something of a stretch, even though, like those cars, this one has a set of trendy frameless windows. Whatever your preference, fastback or SW, there's a clear desire here from the designers to do something different, which we really like. As advertised, the roofline really is quite coupe-like, low and sleek, barely reaching 1.4 metres in height, and flowing into intricately fashioned rear wings that require a complex metal curvature stamping process, normally only used on exotic sports cars. This is one of the things that's made possible these super thin, premium style shut lines. Further forward, the key upper crease lines separate beneath the door mirror, this pronounced one defining the waistline, and a gentler angled sweep flowing back beneath the door handles. Giving the flanks further shape is this lower crease line just above the door sills, which separates arches housing large restyled wheels that can be anything between 17 and 19 inches in size, depending on trim. We've got 18-inch 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝒄 diamond-cut two-tone rims fitted here, and every alloy wheel design is fitted with a 5-spoke wheel centre stamped with the Peugeot shield that conceals the locking nuts. It may well be, though, that it's the sharky looks of this front end that'll really sell this Peugeot to you, especially with the car in this improved form. Previously, there was quite a gap in pavement presence between base-trimmed versions and the upper spec levels, but all 508s now look sharp. The redesigned, more distinctive front grille integrated lower into the bumper and flanked on each side by new 3-claw LED daytime running lights. These flow up towards ultra-thin LED matrix headlamps, and the redesigned basalt grey coloured central brand badge sits proudly above the number plate. The horizontal bonnet has been lowered as far as the designers dared and bears a model designation in a nod to the brand's classic 504 model of the 70s. There are far fewer changes made at the rear, with its elegantly raked back tailgate, though an original owner would notice that the brand shield has been replaced by space-out Peugeot lettering across this central black strip that emphasises the 1.86 metre body width. As before, the rear lights sit behind stylised glass panels with claw effect full LED 3D rear illumination, now standardised across the range, lighting up as part of a welcome sequence when you unlock the car. The lamps feature adaptive intensity and differ in appearance depending on your pavement perspective. Of course, as ever, what's more important is the stuff you can't see. In this case, the sophisticated EMP2 platform that enabled this second generation 508 model to shed 70 kilograms worth of weight, before most versions put all that back on again by installing a PHEV powertrain. As for the inside, well, it'll be disappointing if the extrovert exterior styling wasn't mirrored by equally interesting treatment of the cabin. And that's just what you get. All the screen text being changed as part of this update, but not a lot else, which means that, as before, the first thing you'll initially notice is the so-called cockpit ergonomic layout, Peugeot's term for interior design, that positions you so that you're looking at the instruments over the top of the steering wheel rather than viewing them through it. That wheel is small and low set, facilitating a wrist flick quality of steering feel that Peugeot reckons its owners will really like. It features flattened top and bottom sections so that when you adjust the thing, it's easier to find a position that doesn't either brush your knees or obscure the gauges ahead. A few writers still complain that they can't see the digital dials unless they position the wheel lower than feels natural, but none of our testers have experienced that problem. As you'd hope for in a car tilting at premium prices, it all feels satisfyingly high-end, particularly in this GT form with its Iconite stitched dash and door panels, perforated Mistral leather steering wheel, blue ambient lighting, silver pedals and aluminium door sills. Go for the Focal audio upgrade, and this big speaker dominates the centre of the dash top. There are these smart carbon style inlays. All the trim levels feature part leather upholstery, here paired with soft Alcantara. And if you avoid base trim, you get these particularly comfortable multi-power adjustable front seats approved by the AGR organisation, who campaign for healthy backs. True, the build quality doesn't feel quite as hewn from granite as it would in, say, an Audi. The cheaper feeling plastics used lower down in the doors don't help here, but overall, Peugeot's certainly getting there, and its approach to design is vastly more interesting. We mentioned the upgraded MediaTek earlier. Let's start with the instrument display. As before, a fully configurable and customisable 12.3-inch colour screen. There are new generation dials with a crisper resolution and additional display modes for things like audio settings, driving aids, energy flow and so on that can be changed directly from a roller switch on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. The main display modes are as before: personal, minimum, dials, driving and navigation, plus an energy option for the hybrid, all of which prompt intricately animated changes from the state-of-the-art display and give visual priority to speed readouts, navigation mapping or driving safety features, or you can choose to view only the absolute minimum of information if all that gives you a headache. With the personal option, you can decide what the two main virtual dials will show: driving aids, engine info, a G-force meter, temperature, media, navigation or trip computer info. Just about everything else you'll need to know can be found on what looks like a tablet PC attached to the fascia, a multifunction colour touchscreen that's been changed far more fundamentally, upgraded to what Peugeot calls iConnect Advanced status. And for sure, it is quite a lot more advanced than the original setup, now always supplied in this 10-inch size and borrowed from the brand's smaller 308, though in place of that hatchback's neat, customisable e-toggle menu shortcut controls, this 508 continues with these piano key style buttons below the monitor's lower frame, which offer instant shortcut options to the monitor's most commonly used functions. Unfortunately, the keys protrude from the fascia at a 90-degree angle, so it can be difficult to see their labels when you're driving. As for the changes to this display, well, they include a wireless connection for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto over-the-air updates, and a supposedly more advanced OK Peugeot natural language voice recognition system. Plus, you can now pair two phones to Bluetooth at the same time. As is the trend, the screen features multi-windows and customisable widgets that you navigate through like a smartphone, swiping through the menus from left to right or up and down for notifications, or with a 3-fingered tap to bring up the homepage. At the top of the display, a permanent banner shows outdoor temperature, climate control settings, your position in widget pages, connectivity data, notifications and the time. That's all good, but we still don't find this screen as easy to use as the monitors you'll find in premium rivals, nor is the voice control system as intuitive. It's also still burdened with climate controls, though a few shortcut controls for these reside beneath the row of piano keys. What about cabin practicalities? Well, Peugeot still hasn't found a way of engineering right-hand drive models so that the majority of space in the glove box isn't taken up with a fuse box. But to be fair, that's compensated for by a lot of stowage space elsewhere. There's 32 litres of cabin storage in total, and quite a lot of it's in this big stowage box between the seats, which has a neat stitched butterfly opening double lid and has 2 USB-C ports, illumination and 6.4 litres of space. In front of this lies a twin cup holder area that ought to have a lidded top but compensates with cool lower illumination. To the left of the electronic gear selector, there's a lidded storage area incorporating a 12-volt port and a dedicated slot for wireless phone charging, though on mainstream models you have to pay extra for that feature. The door bins are reasonably sized, include recesses for bottles, and come carpeted to stop loose items from rattling around. Look up in vain for a sunglasses compartment, but there are ticket clips behind the sun visors. As for all-round visibility from the pleasingly high-set driving position, well, that's okay from the front, despite thick front pillars and small side windows, but your view rearwards is somewhat restricted by the swept-back styling, so you'll be glad of the fact that reversing sensors are standard and you get a rear-view camera fitted beyond entry-level trim. Time to take a look at what's served up in the rear. Now, if previously you've owned a medium-sized D-segment model like, say, a Mondeo or a Passat, you might be expecting this Peugeot to offer a little more back seat space than premium badged rivals. But this 508 Fastback's 4,750mm body length is almost dead on that of a Mercedes C-Class. Peugeot having prioritised style over space with this R83 era model. So how will that play out in the back? Well, let's see. When you pull back the long door, and as usual with fastback style designs, try to avoid spearing yourself in the stomach with the acutely angled trailing edge of this frameless rear window. And find yourself on a rear seat with just about enough leg room for a couple of adults, provided the journey isn't too long. It's not terrible. There's actually 3 centimetres more leg room and 5 centimetres more elbow room than you'd get in a comparable Audi A5 Sportback, for instance. The bigger problem is head room, which will be even more restricted if you specify the optional panoramic glass roof. If you're a typical 508 customer, you probably won't care much about any of this. Those that do would be better served in this segment by something like a Citroën C5X or a Škoda Superb. Compensations come with the plush cabin ambience, the intricate stitching on the seats and door cards, and little touches like these illuminated central USB-A ports. All of it delivers an elegant feel. The relative narrowness of the cabin won't help if you have to take 3 folk back here, but the relatively low transmission tunnel makes dealing with that eventuality easier than it would be in some rivals. If there are only 2 of you and you can use this centre armrest, 2 cup holders are provided. There are also netted seat back pockets and decently sized door bins. Right, we'll finish with a look out back at boot space. Now, a powered tailgate, which can work with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper, remains only optional on most models, annoyingly so, because this huge hatch is rather heavy. But once it raises, a 487-litre space is revealed, which impressively isn't at all affected if you opt for a PHEV variant like this one. The huge aperture and pleasingly low loading height puts us in mind of a Saab 900 model from the 90s, though there's not quite as much room as you used to get in one of those. If you were to be loading carry-on cases into here, 7 would fit. Now, to give you some class perspective on that, 10 would fit into a rival Volkswagen Arteon or Škoda Superb. Peugeots remember to include a 12-volt socket, it's on the left, and a bag hook on the right. There's a little more space beneath the floor, just enough for a set of charging leads, but that's only because, disappointingly, a space-saver spare wheel is no longer included. A ski hatch is provided, but if you need to flatten everything, pulling on these toggles behind the headrests allows you to push everything forward. You'll find that the seats don't fold quite flat, but a very reasonable 1,537 litres of space is opened up. Of course, if you're going to be doing that often, then you ought really to have opted instead for the SW Estate body style. This delivers a 530-litre boot thanks to the extra length of the load area and a magic flat button, which, when prodded, folds everything to reveal a 1,780-litre space. Pricing for this improved 508 started from launch and at the time of our test in autumn 2023 from around £34,000, around £9,000 more than was the case when we first tested this car at its original launch back in 2018. That's for this 5-door hatchback body style that Peugeot wants us to call a fastback coupe. The alternative, SW Estate, likely to account for around 60% of the model mix, commands a £1,600 premium over its showroom stablemate. There are two main trim levels, Allure or this plush GT version, with the Peugeot Sport engineered sports model, the range flagship. Every 508 comes with EAT8 auto transmission. It's been a very long time indeed since you could get this car with a manual gearbox. And in order to get a 508 that's remotely affordable these days, you've to stick with the base 1.2-litre PureTech 130 3-cylinder turbo petrol powertrain. There's no longer a diesel option, Peugeot hoping that frugally focused folk will convert to the plug-in hybrid 225 petrol variant we're trying here. Well, they, or more likely their companies, will need deep pockets if they're to do that, because at the time of this test, this PHEV variant started from around £44,000, or over £46,000 for the GT version we're trying here. The top all-wheel drive PHEV Peugeot Sport engineered model, which is ambitiously priced from around £54,000 and will be a rare sight on our roads. To be fair though, it's a fairly unique confection with a prodigious 360 horsepower on tap. The closest match we can think of is a BMW 330e xDrive M Sport at just under £50,000, but that's got an awful lot less power. Returning to the mainstream 508 range, which is our focus here, it'll help this Peugeot's chances that mainstream branded D-segment models are pretty thin on the ground these days. Ford and Mazda, the latest makers to desert this sector, following on from Vauxhall, Kia, Hyundai and Toyota, who've all vanished from it in the last decade. If you're looking for alternatives to a 508, the most obvious one is the car that shares nearly all this Peugeot's engineering, Citroën's C5X. We can't imagine that there'll be too much cross-shopping with that quirky offering though, because it's quite a different kind of car and can't be had as an estate. If you prioritise luxury over sharp driving dynamics though, that Citroën could appeal, and it's significantly cheaper. You'll save around £5,000 over an equivalent 508, which might look particularly tempting if you don't want to pay over the odds for PHEV tech in a car like this. At the time of this test, a C5X plug-in hybrid cost only just over £38,000. The only remaining mainstream branded D-segment options are both Volkswagen Group models. Probably the closest match is the latest fourth-generation version of Škoda's Superb, which, as ever, comes in hatch or estate forms. There were no prices for either Superb body shape at the time of filming this review, but you can expect Škoda to undercut this Peugeot, though not by a huge amount. The Volkswagen range is also worth a look. If you're considering this fastback 508, the VW alternative is the Arteon, priced as we filmed from around £42,000 and also available in shooting brake estate form. There's also the 9th generation Volkswagen Passat, which can only be had as an estate. We'd be surprised if Passat estate pricing was much different from that levied for a 508 SW. If you don't want an SUV or an EV with this size of car, your only other options are premium branded models, but those will give you less space, less equipment for the money, and cost more, quite a lot more actually. If you're looking at this fastback 5-door 508, the Audi A5 Sportback equivalent starts from around £40,000, while a BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe starts from around £45,000, the sort of money you'd also need for an entry-level Mercedes C200 saloon. If you're happy with a sedan, a good left-field alternative is the Lexus ES at around £40,000, which is a non-plug-in, self-charging hybrid. Overall, though, if you want a premium rather than a Peugeot badge on the bonnet of a car like this, be prepared to pay handsomely for it. OK, enough with the comparisons. Ultimately, we don't think you'll fully buy into this 508 until you've tried it and recognise that it does indeed live up to its maker's premium aspirations. If once you've done that, you find yourself to be something of a Peugeot convert, then the deal could be sealed by a perusal of the standard spec, because it's reasonably generous. All 508s now come with matrix LED headlights, plus open and go keyless entry, a reversing camera, power folding mirrors, all-round parking sensors, seats with heating and lumbar adjustment, and a rear armrest with a ski hatch. You also get dark-tinted rear side and tailgate windows, LED signature 3-claw tail lights, automatic headlamps with LED daytime illumination, and special magic wash windscreen wipers that automatically activate when it rains and place their washer nozzles on the blades for quicker, more effective cleaning. Plus, there's an alarm and a drive mode system that alters steering feel, throttle response and gear shift timings, along with a high standard of camera safety kit, which we'll cover off for you in a moment. The SW version gets roof rails as well. Move inside and you'll find an cockpit instrument binnacle based around a 12.3-inch configurable digital instrument panel. In addition, there's dual-zone climate control, an electrochrome rear view mirror, seats with lumbar adjustment and a rear armrest with a ski hatch. Infotainment's primarily dealt with by a 10-inch iConnect advanced colour touchscreen in the centre of the dash that now offers wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto over-the-air updates and voice recognition, responding to the phrase occasionally, "OK Peugeot," along with expected features like an 8-speaker DAB stereo system and Bluetooth. Plus, there's connected 3D navigation with TomTom live updates and speed cam alerts. You can also interact with your 508 when you're away from it, thanks to the My Peugeot app. Via this, you can see essential data like fuel consumption and fuel level, plus you can make servicing appointments and access a digital handbook. What about the differences between spec levels? Well, base Allure spec gets 17-inch alloy Merion, diamond cut two-tone wheels and part faux leather upholstery paired with Faygo cloth. This plusher GT version swaps these features out for 18-inch Ēfēra, diamond-cut two-tone wheels and part faux leather upholstery paired with Alcantara and Iconite stitching extended into the dashboard, doors and steering wheel. Other GT spec additions include aluminium pedals, blue ambient lighting, nearer black door mirrors, a 360-degree Visio Park camera system, and heated front seats that are ergonomically approved by the AGR organisation, who campaign for healthy backs. Plus, there are some extra drive assist features, and the SW version gets aluminium boot rails. If you're one of the rare folk prepared to stretch to the top Peugeot Sport engineered version, you get just about everything Peugeot can fit onto this car. So, apart from the potent all-wheel drive PHEV system and a bespoke front grille, there's 20-inch XR diamond-cut two-tone wheels and upholstery in Mistral Napa leather paired with Alcantara, along with a night vision system, a powered tailgate, power-adjustable massaging front seats, a wireless phone charger, branded door sills, and a 10-speaker 690-watt Focal premium audio hi-fi system. On to extras and options. Well, a panoramic glass roof is offered with the two main trim levels. With Allure trim, you can add the more supportive AGR-approved front seats and Mistral 𝗙cie leather upholstery. And with this GT version, you can add powered front seat operation with a massage function and the Focal hi-fi system upgrade, which we've been trying here. GT customers can additionally add larger 19-inch Augusta alloy wheels, which on hybrid models also come as part of an optional dynamic pack that additionally includes adaptive suspension control. What about practical options? Well, it's disappointing that you don't now get a space-saver spare wheel on a 508 unless you pay extra for it on a PureTech 130 version. Across the range, you can add a tow bar, of course, and with an SW model, you can add a powered tailgate with or without gesture control and a load retention net. With the Allure and GT PHEV models, you have to pay extra for a 7.4 kilowatt monophase onboard charger that's standard on the Peugeot Sport engineered version. On to aesthetics. Now, unless you want your Allure or GT spec 508 painted in metallic eclipse blue, you'll need to be paying your Peugeot dealer extra for your choice of shade. The standard shade is selenium grey. With the Peugeot Sport engineered model, across the range, there are various other extra cost metallic shades, including this Test Car's Oakonite White and a premium priced Elixir Red finish. For the inside, you can get the Peugeot Shield embroidered onto the front seat headrests. Onto safety. Now, all 508s come with the brand's Safety Plus pack, which gives you an advanced emergency braking system with front collision warning. There's also driver attention alert, which monitors your reactions for drowsiness, extended traffic sign recognition, which pictures speed limit signs that you pass and displays them on the dash, and smart beam assistance, which will automatically dip your headlights for you at night. Active lane keeping assistance with road edge detection, meanwhile, is a package which will detect if you stray over the centre delineating lines on the highway or over the road edge line, and adds subtle steering assistance to ease you back to where you ought to be. Blind spot detection warns you if you're about to pull out in front of another vehicle, and intelligent speed adaptation, flank guard protection, helps when you're manoeuvring, automatically stopping you from hitting things like trees or posts or pedestrians at low speeds. If you want to go further, you'll need the Drive Assist Pack Plus standard above base trim, which includes ACC, Adaptive Cruise Control. This includes a stop and go function that recognises an oncoming tailback and can, if necessary, slow you right down to a stop, then seamlessly start you off again. And there's lane positioning assist, which positions the car centrally in the lane of travel, applying left and right trajectory corrections accordingly, whilst the adaptive cruise control maintains speed and distance from the traffic ahead. These features can be added into base Allure spec if you tick the box for an extra cost Techno Pack, which also includes a wireless phone charging mat and the Vizio Park 360-degree camera system. Across the 508 range, as you'd expect, there are all the usual passive safety features: twin front, side and curtain airbags, though no driver's knee bag, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, tyre under inflation detection, and an active bonnet that would minimise injuries in a collision with a pedestrian. Plus, there's the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability control. And across the lineup, you get Peugeot's Connect SOS and assistance package that'll automatically alert the emergency services with your exact location if the airbags go off. There's not much point in our discussing fuel and CO2 figures or engine efficiency until we've addressed the elephant in the room here: residual values. No matter how much you might like the styling or the distinctively French demeanour of a 508, you're not going to buy one, or more likely lease one, if depreciation is catastrophic, as it was on the first generation pre-2018 era model. So here's a stat for you to chew over: up to 47%. That's the percentage of original value that industry experts reckon will apply to a typical PHEV SWGT version of this Mark II model 508 after you've run one for 3 years and 36,000 miles. That's really not far off a premium brand model. A BMW 3 Series is rated at 52% over the same period. It's true that with this fastback body shape, residuals fall back down a bit to 42% over the same period. But when you take into account the much lower 508 asking prices, there's a considerable gap to the premium brands if you take equipment into account. This Peugeot can still more than add up on the balance sheet. How has Peugeot turned this around? Well, the fact that this car is found in relatively tiny numbers in our market obviously helps, but the main change relates to the fact that the company no longer has to aggressively sell you this car. These days, virtually all of Peugeot's profits come from either SUVs or commercial vehicles, so there's no need for the brand to look for large production numbers elsewhere in its model lineup. If you want a 508, great. If you don't, the company's not going to incentivize you into buying one with drastic residual wrecking discounts in the way it would have done with previous D-segment models. With that out of the way, you might be more interested to hear about this car's efficiency showing. This starts, as usual, with modern Peugeot products. With inherent lightness, a base PureTech 130 version of this car has a family hatchback-like curb weight of just 1,426 kilograms, delivered primarily through use of the conglomerate's advanced EMP2 platform. Plonking a plug-in hybrid powertrain on top ruins that, of course, but the 1,726 kilogram curb weight figure for the hybrid 225 variant we're trying here is still not bad for a PHEV. The base PureTech 130 is WLTP rated at up to 50 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and up to 127 grams per kilometre of CO2. The overall reality for this hybrid 225 variant probably won't be a lot different unless you really make full use of its 42.3 mile EV range. Its official figures are 274.8 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 23 grams per kilometre of CO2. Charging from empty to full via a 7.4 kilowatt wall box takes an hour and 45 minutes. And with the Allure and GT PHEV models, you have to pay extra for a 7.4 kilowatt monophase onboard charger. That's standard on the Peugeot Sport Engineered version. That heavier twin motor Peugeot Sport Engineered PHEV model doesn't do quite as well when it comes to the efficiency stats, of course. The EV range falls to 34.2 miles. The combined fuel figure is 158.5 mpg and the CO2 reading is 40 grams per kilometre. Remember that both PHEV models feature an e-save function, allowing the driver to preserve electrical energy for planned routes ahead, say the town driving you might have to do at the end of a long motorway journey. The plug-in hybrid 508 variants offer a thermal preconditioning function too. Via the My Peugeot smartphone app or by using the vehicle's touchscreen, owners can schedule a wake-up time for the battery. This means that the cells can be at the optimal temperature for efficiency from the time you start up. Plus, of course, the interior can also be pre-cooled or preheated as well. As for public charging, well, via Peugeot's free-to-move e-solutions setup, 508 customers are offered access to over 260,000 charging points across Europe. Whatever 508 engine you choose to drive with, planning ahead is certainly going to pay frugality dividends. This hybrid version has an energy section of the centre monitor with a statistics screen that graphically shows your consumption over the last 30 minutes in both mpg and miles per kilowatt hour. You can also use the energy section to view an energy flow monitor and to set charging times. Of course, running costs are about a lot more than just statistical efficiency. So what else are you going to need to know? Well, there's the usual unremarkable 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty. And insurance groupings start at 28 for the PureTech 130 and range between groups 31 to 33 for the hybrid 225. It's Group 41 for the Peugeot Sport Engineered model. What about maintenance? Well, owners can opt to purchase any 508 with a single service plan to cover all essential maintenance. Service intervals are every year or 20,000 miles. And you can budget ahead for the work by taking up Peugeot's service plan that for a fixed monthly fee can cover you for up to 50,000 miles of motoring over either 3 or 5 years. And if you've chosen a PHEV 508, you'll be given a certificate of battery capacity after each service to make it easier to resell your car by being able to guarantee its level of battery capacity. The battery in question, by the way, comes with an 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty for 70% of its capacity. There are, of course, more practical and more prestigiously badged D-segment models you could choose over this one. A couple might also be a little more fun to drive, but as a piece of pavement theatre, this Peugeot stands apart from most of its rivals, especially in this updated form. Are there issues? Well, you have to avoid the base PureTech model to get the full 508 drive experience, and that means you really will be paying premium brand money for one of these, which means you've really got to want one. But you might. The avant-garde cabin, the lovely focused driving position and the distinctively French quality feel are all things that will endear the right kind of buyer to this car. Someone bored with Teutonic excellence and car park cred who comes to this segment in search of something deliciously different. And in summary, well, not everyone will like a 508 and even fewer will be minded to choose one. But if it had more generic appeal, it wouldn't be the distinctive contender it is. This car continues to make its segment a more interesting place, just as big Peugeots once did. There's a sense of inherent desirability here you just can't get from most of the other contenders in this class. If you like, it's the want one factor, and here you might find that a very strong draw.